On December 12, 2015, the COP21 in Paris, the parties to the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, reached a historic agreement to combat climate change. The idea began in order to accelerate and generate much-needed actions and investments for a more sustainable and low-carbon future. The Paris Agreement set out to improve and replace the Kyoto Protocol, a previous international treaty designed to curb the release of greenhouse gases. It entered into force on November 4, 2016 and has been signed by 195 countries and ratified by 188 as of November 2020. This agreement means that all countries have a common cause to undertake a joint effort in search of a better alternative to climate change. In addition, require all parties to do everything in their power to nationally determine contributions and to redouble their efforts in the coming years. This includes an obligation for all parties to regularly report on their emissions and on their enforcement efforts. Added to this is a global inventory every 5 years to assess collective progress toward achievement, the purpose of the agreement, and to report on new individual measures by the parties. The Paris Agreement addresses crucial areas necessary to combat climate change. Some of the key aspects of the agreement are: 1. Strengthen the international response to the threat of climate change, keeping a global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And 2. To increase the ability of countries to deal with the impacts of climate change, and on making finances flows consistent with the low GHG emissions and climate-resilient pathway. Currently, the GP, industrialized and emerging countries that are keeping their word in Paris are China, the whole of EU, that are France, Great Britain, Germany and Italy, and India, Indonesia, Arabia, Russia and Turkey.
By now, you may be wondering how does leadership is involved in the agreement. As it was mentioned before, the purpose for this agreement is to accelerate and generate more actions and investments for a more sustainable and carbon-less future. In other words, what they are trying to do is mitigate risk, foster market transformation, and also improve innovation. These drivers are also known as characteristics of leadership for sustainability, a branch of this skill that through collaboration seeks to shape the context in which they operate and explore new market opportunities by achieving certain goals like promoting common practices, sharing information to foster discoveries, sharing investments to reduce risk, and creating a consolidating base of power to influence. Now that the type of leadership and its relation with the Paris Agreement is evidenced, it is possible to classify and identify the type of collaboration used internally and externally through the agreement. Some of these collaborations are the transformational collaboration, the alliance by combination integration, and finally the influence and exchange alliance.
To start off, transformational leadership is led by the concept where a group of leaders work together to identify a needed change, creating a vision to guide the change through inspiration along the path. Therefore, in the COP21 signed by the countries already mentioned, an important factor to take part were the young people, regarding the climate change effects and how their way of living will be permanently changed, which impulsed and permitted the agreement to be extended rapidly all around the world. However, these have not been well introduced in all of the signing countries. To make a little conception about it, just half of them have not contributed to reducing CO2 emissions, and none of the climate action plans from the G20 countries are aligned with the COP21 agreement nowadays, leaving aside a really important part regarding the combination and integration leadership, which is focused in the merging of 2 or more entities in order to achieve shared strategic objectives. So, as the nations have not proposed a well-developed plan of reconstruction, neither innovation processes for those industrial companies that addresses emissions or any other of the agreement's problematics, these companies haven't been able to change their way of production or operations because they don't know how or don't have the resources to do so, due to the lack of support from the governments. As well, we can point out how a great powerful country such as USA preferred to leave the agreement focusing in leading economical development and competitiveness against climate change. These have not allowed the correct embracement of the problem or to take the agreements with a complete matter of importance. However, in the other face of the coin, we have half of the nations which have contributed to promoting the agreement establishment within their production lines, such as the UN nations led by Holland, France, UK, Germany, and Italy, and then followed by great manufacturer countries such as China, India, and Indonesia, those who gamble to renewable energies and input a date of expiration to sources such as coal and carbon. In addition, we can see how the influence and exchange alliance leadership plays an important role over these countries to reach a major performance and benefits along the way, which is the first objective led by China, in order to achieve what they need to prosecute with these establishments done by the Occidental countries and their problematics to start being the major powerful country all around the world, which we are going to talk about later on how the economical prospects will change along the path with the new challenges coming for economy.
Environmental and climatic challenge are relevant challenge in the medium and long term, which grows examine all sectors of society. Companies play an important role in this, as providers of products and services that are compatible with what society demands. In this sense, the measurement and administration of the environmental impacts of each company must be highlighted. For this, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development has developed the Presentation of Climate Change document, Business Solution for the UN Climate Summit, in which it proposed 14 strategies for the business sector to face climate change. The 14 points of the document are divided into three groups. First group is carbon storage. These points covers from the use and reuse of carbon to the conservation of the world forest reserves. For example, the Tropical Forest Alliance 2020, a public-private strategy that was born from the meeting between the United States government and the Consumer Goods Forum during the Rio +20 conference. The second group is reduction of greenhouse gases. The first step in this scenario is the restoration of productivity to the degraded land. Land degradation is defined as the loss or reduction of its economic or biological productivity. Within this point, the use of efficient energy is also discussed, from cities to their infrastructure working together to reduce the ecological footprint of the world's seas. Finally, the first group is resistance to change in climate. Just as the base of company is their supply chain, agriculture is for a sustainable society, and in this process must combine climate change and food safety. For this reason, it must change towards more efficient process.
Colombia contributes to 0.46% of global emissions of greenhouse gases. Although the figure is not very high compared to other countries, it is always growing. For that reason, the country promised to reduce 20% of its emissions based on a projected scenario for 2030, and even to reduce 30% if it comes with international cooperation in accordance with the Paris Agreement. At the end of 2015, Colombia made a commitment to the international community to take 10 concrete adaptation measures, ranging from the delimitation and protection of the 36 Paramo complexes to achieving that 100 of the national territory has adaptation plans to change climate. In July 2018, Colombia ratified the Paris Agreement. Now, what implications does this have for Colombia? To put it in context, Colombia is the second most biodiverse country in the world. It has approximately 14% of the biodiversity of the entire planet. Internally, it has the National System of Protected Areas, made up of 1,116 protected areas that cover approximately 31,200,000 hectares, equivalent to 50% of the national territory. However, Colombian biodiversity is threatened by several causes, such as transformation of habitats and natural ecosystems, overexploitation caused by economic activities, deforestation, the agricultural activity, the livestock, the climate change, the mining, the waste of management, and the destruction of wetlands and paramo areas. Biodiversity is a very important factor as it supports a wide variety of environmental services on which societies depend. Therefore, the fact that Colombia ratified and committed to its objectives stipulated in the Paris Agreement is an important event in terms of preservation and commitment to its ecosystem and biodiversity. This agreement focuses on points such as the creation of funds for peace and sustainable development in rural areas to stop deforestation caused by productive activities and the armed conflict. The International Alliance to finance projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions produced by forest degradation. And finally, the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, the National Parks of Colombia and other entities signed a memorandum of understanding in which they commit to finance and
United States notified the United Nations of its retirement a year ago, on November 4 of 2019. Under the terms of the agreement, that retirement took effect on November 4 of this year. For his part, Biden promised to return to the deal as soon as possible after his assumption of the office. The $2 trillion climate plan he proposed seeks for the United States to achieve 100% clean electricity generation by 2035. When the United States joined to the Paris Agreement under the Barack Obama administration, it pledged to cut these emissions by 26 to 28% by 2025, compared to 2005 levels. But the analysis shows that the United States is nowhere near reaching those goals. If the United States were to rejoin to the Paris Agreement, it will be expected to announce more ambitious cuts by 2030. This will imply that the country also outlines detailed plans for how it will achieve these goals. For the current President of the United States, Donald Trump, the Paris Agreement is an economic deceit. He argues that this agreement will force the United States to give money to poor countries, and it allowed countries like China and India to grow without stopping their contamination. Not true, because the agreement stipulates that already developed nations must provide funds for developing nations, so these countries in developing process could switch to renewable energy models and not base their growth on carbon and fossils. For Trump, this meant giving millions of dollars to poor countries, while China had no limits on its pollution. Which is not true either, because China invests twice as much as the United States in renewable energy projects in 2017, with a total amount of $1,400 million, while the United States invests just $44 million. China has understood that being one of the most polluted countries in the world, it must also be the first to generate a change in energy and consumption models. For Donald Trump, the Paris Agreement will kill jobs in the mining and industrial sector. However, currently the green energy market generates more jobs than the mining industrial sector. Trump chose to remove the United States from the agreement, being the second largest contributor to emissions worldwide, and the contribution of this country is essential, since it's the first world power. Its citizens have the highest consumption rates in the world, and an American citizen consumes on average 3 times more than an European citizen and 6 times more than a Latin American citizen. Therefore, American consumption constitutes a fundamental aspect to try to reduce, and the United States has the necessary technology to move to an economic green.
Well, the question now is, how are they going to achieve this? Talking about meeting all the people needs within the means of the living planet sounds quite impossible, even more in our society of unreal consumption. Kate Raworth, the author of Downed Economics, wants that this radical theoretical idea turns out to be a transformative action. What a great leader. With his team, she launched Downed Economics Action Lab, or more known as DEAL, an organization that wants to collaborate with all the change makers around the world and turn their ideas into reality. One of those change makers, as we already said, is Amsterdam, a city that had already been working on the plan to become the real proof that the model works. Now, with the pandemic, has never been so clear, and they have decided that as soon as the health emergency ends, they will begin to implement everything they have planned. To achieve these set goals requires a global vision of all the problems and collaboration at all levels, understanding that the supply chain is long and that no matter where you are, you can have a positive impact on improving processes. For example, as you know, many of the goods consumed in Europe enter through the port of Amsterdam, making it one of the most important ports of the Eurozone. Also, it is the world's single largest importer of cocoa beans, mostly from West Africa, where unfortunately there is too much labor exploitation. Now, if the city begins to take measures based on the donut, they will surely require that cocoa companies have proof certifying that they have fair dealings with their collaborators. This means that an adjustment in the economic structure of a city like Amsterdam can trigger a labor reform in countries in Africa. That's huge. In 2017, Amsterdam's CO2 emissions were 31% above 1990 levels, caused mainly by construction materials, food, and consumer products that the city imports. One of the main goals, as we have been talking about, is climate change, and Amsterdam wants to reduce the city's CO2 emissions to 55% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 95% below by 2050. To achieve this, one of the main strategies is to have a 50% reduction in the use of primary raw materials by 2030 and be a fully circular economy by 2050. Achieving this not only helps to reduce ocean acidification, air pollution, and the impact of climate change, but also shows the world that with transformative leadership, determination, and collaboration from different organizations, we can live optimally without exceeding work capabilities.
How does leadership for sustainability is involved in the Agreement of Paris? Doing a brief recap of all the topics managed through this documentary, we can confirm that leadership for sustainability is the base and core for the Agreement of Paris, not only due to the purpose and the intention they have, but also due to the goals, collaborations, and alliances that they have developed by it. Moreover, it is evidence that they are strongly focused in the climate change due to the agenda that they have set up through the years, and also due to the visibility that they have given to this topic and causing that more NGOs and authorities such as the World Economic Forum and the WBCSD start to think about this topic as a path to create and improve their management and strategies for the future. But what consequences does it bring to the behavioral economics and sustainability of the world? In this part, we are going to discuss about two of the countries developed in the documentary. In the case of United States, despite being one of the world's largest power and the second country with the highest CO2 emissions, it has officially its retirement from the Paris Agreement since November the 4th of this year. Although former President Barack Obama fought to sign the country into this pro-environment agreement, current President Donald Trump has taken a very radical stance, arguing that this agreement will force the US to pay millions of dollars to poor countries and allow countries to, as China and India, continue to pollute without limit. Joe Biden, the elected candidate for the US presidency, has promised to resubscribe the country to the agreement. But the change now is much greater as pollution has been increasing in recent years. The United States is one of the main promoters of economic growth. Unlike countries like the Netherlands, it has not contemplated a change in its economic model. On the contrary, it is setting increasingly higher growth goals.